Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. Between the OTC, New York Stock Exchange, and NASDAQ, there are over 22,000 companies traded publicly. I feel that small businesses are the backbone of America. The number one reason for this channel is to help small companies gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest. Jon Ollwerther, Vice President of Business Development for Kartoon Studios. Kartoon Studios' mission is to create content with a purpose. They have their own distribution platform, the Kartoon Channel, and they have their own animation studios. They have Stan Lee properties. They just announced a new property, but I'm going to let Jon go ahead and explain that in the interview that's coming up. It's important for you to understand that this is not a paid-for promotion. I do not collect compensation for the interviews I do here. I do look for companies that could potentially provide an above average return on investment. But that is not the primary reason for the channel. There's a thing called impact investing. It's tied to environmental, social, and governance. I think that is a very narrow definition of what impact can be. By helping a small company become a large corporation, if you and I can become ambassadors of a product because the values of that company align with our own, think of all the jobs that will be created as that small company becomes a big company. Think about the community that that company is in. Typically, they thrive along with the company. This channel is to help companies that are relatively unknown become known so that they can build a following and they can have brand ambassadors that share their vision, share their mission, and are willing to do what they can to help have a positive impact on humanity. That's what this channel is all about. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. I recommend highly that before buying any security, you speak to a financial advisor and do your own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with a follow-up, a way too long in between follow-up with a company that the last time I met with them was actually called Genius Brands International, which is now Kartoon Studios. And back then I met with Jon Ollwerther, who is the Vice President of, is it business development that you are, Jon?
It is, yeah.
And recently, and I hate to say this publicly because, well, they just had some news on a franchise that when I was a wee bitty little guy, was one of my favorites, actually. Winnie the Pooh, right? So, Jon, first, thanks for coming in and giving us the update. We got a lot to go cover in a very short period of time. How are things over at Kartoon Studios?
Well, first off, it's good to see you, Tim, and thanks for having us back. I won't spill your secret that you loved Winnie the Pooh. It's kind of everybody's secret, and that's one of the reasons that we love the property. A lot of us grew up on it. I have an almost 2-year-old daughter who's growing up on it. It's a property that transcends cultural divisions, cultural chasms. It speaks to everybody around the world, and everybody knows it and enjoys it. And again, it's something that I am reading to my daughter and will read to my daughter, and she enjoys like tens of generations have before her.
So I'm assuming that, first of all, I was shocked to see that this was actually a Disney franchise that you guys wound up being able to acquire. That kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
And number two, I'm thinking that, look, it's antiquated, it's old, but I'm thinking you guys can spruce this thing up and bring it up to current times.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And look, what I'd love to do is just put a pin in Winnie the Pooh and give you kind of the quick corporate update if I can. And you might have some viewers who don't know about Kartoon Studios, and I'll give them the
Absolutely.
overview. So when we last spoke, Tim, we were known as Genius Brands International, and our company has gone through a tremendous transformation over the last few years. When I joined the company, it was about a $10 million, $15 million market cap company with two shows on TV, Llama Llama on Netflix and Rainbow Rangers, which was on Nick Jr. at the time. Both were in their first season. Both were subsequently picked up for second seasons. Rainbow Rangers was picked up for more seasons. Um, both beloved properties, both still out there today, and I hear from parents and kids about them all the time. But the company has grown a lot. We raised a significant amount of capital to engage in M&A. We acquired stakes in animation studios, IP catalogs, media companies, important IP like Stan Lee, who created all the great Marvel superheroes, and of course all the characters that he created post Marvel as well. And so our company has changed a tremendous amount in the last few years. Importantly, we also launched Cartoon Channel, which at the time our CEO said it's like Netflix for kids. And what he meant by that was it's a streaming platform for kids and families that is safe. It's a safe environment for kids to consume appropriate content. And that has resonated with the market. That business we announced broke even, and we subsequently announced is actually making money, which makes it one of the only businesses in the streaming world that's actually profitable today.
Which is a big statement because there are a lot of competitors. It seems like all the time there are more popping up of these streaming. I guess that's the way things are going. I just read an article yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before, that the old school media companies are struggling, right? The Liberty Medias and John Malone's. I mean, these guys are. It's a different game today with all the streaming outfits.
It definitely is a different game today. And we took an intentional strategy with Cartoon Channel, which is also partnered with Amoeba, another kids streaming platform, and Frederator, which is an older kids streaming platform. And so those three brands together are really our consumer-facing distribution brands: Cartoon Channel, Amoeba, and Frederator. And we've put them together. We have commonized a lot of back end, a lot of process. We've put one team across them. And so we've really done a lot of consolidation and streamlining on that business. But our goal was always to build a profitable platform, not necessarily the biggest platform. And when you're a small cap company, you don't necessarily have access to the capital that the Walt Disney Company or Netflix or even Paramount has to finance streaming properties. And so we had to go about it a different way.
All right, so there are going to be. We will talk about real quickly, briefly.
Do it.
If you've been a shareholder of Genius through the transition to Cartoon, it's been painful, right? It has not been a fun process. The capital raises and the recent reverse split was, I mean, those were painful things to go through for shareholders. And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pull any punches. However, I think right now is the best I have felt about the direction of where the company is headed in a long time. And I've been following Genius for a lot of years.
You know the company pretty darn well. Tim, I'm a shareholder. I was a shareholder like yourself and like all of our shareholders before I came to work for the company. I have only ever bought shares. I've never sold a single share, and I have zero plans to sell shares. You're right. It has been a difficult transition, but I do believe that we are in the best position that we've ever been as a company. You mentioned some financings that we've done in the past, and by the way, I don't think we're alone in the small cap world and those financings, but I'd like to highlight one thing related to Winnie the Pooh that I think the market really missed.
Yeah, go ahead. Because it is a big deal.
It's a huge deal. It's the biggest deal. Is traditionally we have operated where we've financed content off of our balance sheet, our own balance sheet. And look, that's an okay model, but what we've executed here is a different model that reduces risk for shareholders tremendously. We have gone and sought financing with a partner, and that's not off of our balance sheet. That's a joint venture with a partner where we've raised $30 million to finance Winnie the Pooh. So what does that mean for shareholders? That means risk is incredibly limited and upside is there just as always.
With a proven franchise. This is not a brand new, franchise that you're bringing up. You've got a proven franchise that is loved by, I would imagine, millions of people. And if you grew up on them and now you're a parent and you remember, some of the lessons that Winnie the Pooh taught you and how lovable that character was, then odds are you're probably going to turn your children over to that franchise, right? You're going to introduce them to Winnie the Pooh.
And the interesting thing is our audience, there's a new batch every year. We speak to a very special audience, to kids and families. And look, my family is a testament to that. There's new kids being born every year, and new kids who are discovering entertainment properties, whether it's literary, film, TV, every single year. And so to a child, it's not Company X's Winnie the Pooh. It's just Winnie the Pooh. They fall in love with it for the first time, and I think that's going to happen with our Winnie the Pooh. You mentioned that, of course, there's going to be differences between the Winnie the Pooh that a lot of people know and ours. And I think that the market's really going to embrace them. The consumer market, I think kids are going to love them. Families are going to love what we're doing with it. And these are the franchises that are really impactful and teach important lessons, but are also fun for kids and engaging.
So speaking of the brands, let's just real quickly, I want to go through
Yeah.
the most recent is Shaq's Garage, right?
Mhm.
How's Shaq's performing?
So we just put out season 2 of Shaq's Garage, and Shaq's Garage season 1 was available on fast platforms like Pluto. Shaq and Gronk, so Rob Gronkowski of football fame, do voices on the show. And what we've seen with Shaq's Garage is a steady fan base. And I'll point to programs like Peppa Pig, if your viewers know that, or Paw Patrol, if your viewers know that. These are kids IP juggernauts, and even Coco Melon, which is another juggernaut. It takes time to build an audience. To have a successful show and a successful licensing program, you need a few things. You need awareness. Kids need to know about it.
Right?
You need affinity. They need to know about it and like it. And you need repetition. It needs to be seen and seen and seen. And again, as the father of an almost 2-year-old, I can tell you, when my daughter likes something, she says again, again, or more. And so she wants to do it over and over and over again. And so that's how kids know properties. That's how they fall in love with properties. And so launching a second season, going into a second season of Shaq's Garage is very important because not only does it show our market, our kids' entertainment market, that there's more content behind season 1, it also shows kids and families that there's more and that they have more product to engage in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got also this is coming, but it's Wolfgang Puck Secret Chef Academy, and maybe people might think, but I got to tell you, what's the with the cooking show with it's Hell's Kitchen guy. There's
Gordon
Hell's Kitchen,
Ramsay.
and then there's a couple of cooking shows where they've got, and I've seen those shows have kids on there that are
Yeah.
cooking, right?
And kids love to cook. It's something that you can involve kids in. There's a degree of creativity, there's science, there's math. It's a great learning activity and cultural exploration of the world. Often we learn about cultures through food. And so if you look at some of the most successful sort of food-based entertainment in the history of TV, like look at Anthony Bourdain. A lot of travel shows explore culture through food. And so food is a gateway to a lot of learning for kids. So this is a show we've been pretty quiet about this, and we'll remain quiet until there's something to talk about. But I will say you're 100% right that food is important to kids and families. And as human beings, that's also where we gather, is often around the table.
Right.
And as families, that's where we gather.
All
So it's
right.
an important focal point for kids.
That one's on its way. Wolfgang Puck, I think that's, everybody knows who that is. You've got Stan Lee, Superhero Kindergarten, which was with
Mhm.
Arnold, right? And
Mhm.
I'm not sure where you are with that one, but I actually like the show. I did watch a few of them, and probably more than a few. I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, look, we had a great writer on it, Steve Banks, who wrote on SpongeBob for years, wildly talented. We had a great animation team behind it. In fact, I have one of the cells from that show, or frames of animation, sort of over behind my desk that way. And Arnold Schwarzenegger has one of the most iconic voices of our age. And so that program was a pillar of launching into our Stan Lee world. And as we delve further into Stan Lee, you're going to see content that looks very different than Superhero Kindergarten, but but no less meaningful and no less sort of laden with Stan Lee and that DNA of superhero.
Okay, Stan Lee, I think we all know is a big one. Then you mentioned Rainbow Rangers earlier, which has got its following, and then Llama Llama has been
Llama
around.
Llama, yeah. And
But
so, look, Rainbow Rangers and Llama Llama are two shows that I hear about all the time, that friends or friends of friends pick up the phone and say how much they like, and that kids react to.
these are the two that I wish you had more traction on. Thomas Edison's Secret Lab, and well, Baby Genius, I know is a big one for you guys. But this one too, Secret Millionaires Club with Warren Buffett. I mean, I don't think this thing is nearly as well known and as it should be, right? I mean, at some point, I think this is going to be like a classic right here, because you got one of the smartest investors on the planet that is actually participates in this show, right? And the lessons aren't just lessons. I mean, actually, the lessons are not really investing; they're life lessons, is what you get from Warren.
Secret Millionaires Club is not financial lessons like how to read a balance sheet. It is fundamental life and prosperity lessons, like the best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. Invest in yourself. That's classic Warren. And by the way, Warren wrote the curriculum for the show. And Warren does his own voice on the show. And so yeah, there are great lessons in there. And um, by the way, it's a show that we hear about every single week. We hear something from some kid or some parent saying how great the show is and that it taught their child X.
And that's what it's about, right? I mean, that's what it's about.
You know, you mentioned Baby Genius. Baby Genius is a property, Tim, and that's what Genius Brands was named for. Our the former name of the company was really the namesake was Genius Brands, and it's a property that still resonates with kids and parents. very musically driven, and of course we're always looking at ways to infuse new value into our IP, and that's one that continues to perform and perform in interesting ways. It just seems to have stood the test of over 20 years for that IP.
Okay. And then Stanley, the Stanley universe. I mean, that's a whole big. So just to give everybody, why don't you give everybody a quick
Sure.
rundown of exactly what it is that you have and how that can benefit
Yeah.
Kartoon.
So through a joint venture, we're the controlling partner of Stan Lee's name, image, likeness, and a catalog of properties he created after his time at Marvel. And for anybody who doesn't know Stan Lee, Stan was one of the creative geniuses behind all of the Marvel superheroes. So if you look at all of the Marvel canon of superheroes, Spider-Man, Hulk, the Avengers, Black Panther, and you tab up the films, only the theatrical film releases, and only box office sales for those theatrical releases, the value created by one man's mind exceeds $45 billion.
Thank you so much. That is what I call the godfather of the comic book industry. I mean, the
Yeah.
guy was brilliant. There's just no question about that. He had such a creative mind. And if you guys had a documentary on him, didn't you, at one point?
So, yeah, there's a doc that came out a year or two ago, and it premiered at Tribeca, and it's actually on Disney Plus today, and it's about Stan. And there have been other docs and scores of books written, and actually a handful of really great podcasts. If any of your listeners are into podcasts, on Marvel and Stan Lee. Stan is an icon. He is the creator's creator, and you can probably see it. I can't help but smile when I think of Stan and get to talk about Stan. It's a privilege because he created our modern pantheon of gods. It's something where we all commune over these superheroes. And by the way, he created more. And that's the catalog, we call it the vault of Stan Lee properties that we will be bringing to the market in the coming years. And so that's really
That's through literature, that's through cartoons and possibly film, correct?
Yeah, I think somebody put it this way, Marvel 2.0, and I liked how that person put it. Think of sort of the next iteration of great franchise content, and that's across all media, from literature to podcast to film and TV to gaming, you name it. And it applies. And when you talk about de-risking entertainment ventures and intellectual property, Stan Lee is a de-risked property. Stan has had great success over his career. There's already great affinity in the market for Stan's name and his creations, and demand with consumers. And that's everybody from the Comic-Con devotees to the casual Marvel cinema goer. And I think, what's interesting is there's been a lot of talk lately about Hollywood press puts it as the death of the superhero film or the death of the comic book. I don't really think that's the case. And I think if you look at the numbers, most of Hollywood would take a bad Marvel box office as a good day for anything else. And in our research, Tim, what we see is that fans are looking for these stories, and they're looking for a world that they can enter that is exciting and new and doesn't require them to do maybe the homework that other franchises require. I think there is a little bit of fatigue, if you will, around, well, gee, I would love to go see this movie. It looks really exciting. But in order to understand this film or this TV series, I've got to watch 5 others, and I just don't have the time. or
Right.
I just don't have the bandwidth. And that really clicks for me, not just across film, but also in comic books. When a friend and colleague of mine, Michael Uslan, who's involved in the Stan Lee franchise, said, the last time I really understood 100% what was going on in an X-Men comic book was in the 90s. They've just gotten too complex and too self-referential. And it's kind of like, I think for a lot of fans, one fan put it this way to me. It's kind of like when there's an inside joke and you're on the outside, it doesn't feel good.
Right.
What these properties do is it's not an inside joke. It's a joke that everybody can understand and they're welcomed in. And so I'm really excited. Comic-Con in San Diego is coming up at the end of this month, at the end of July, and we have some exciting things going on there. We have a panel with some incredible participants on it who will be speaking about Stan and their experience with Stan. We have some new apparel with really exciting partners launching. We've talked about this publicly before, so I can share with you here today with Vivi, who is the premier platform for digital collectibles, and with Multiverse Clothing Company. And Multiverse Clothing Company makes some of the best looking garments I've seen. Um, these things are works of art in and of themselves. And we partnered with some artists, actually, some fine artists like Rob Pryor and Bill Sienkiewicz and Burton Morris. And these are artists who knew Stan, who loved Stan, and more importantly, who Stan loved.
Right.
And creativity begets creativity. And these were people who worked together, who knew each other, who respected each other, who stimulated new ideas in each other. And so we've had the good fortune of bringing them into the Stan Lee universe fold to honor Stan and to continue his memory and to build the next 100 years of Stan Lee. We're Stan would have been just over 100 today. And
I
so,
was just going to bring. I was
yeah.
just going to bring that up. He literally would have turned. What was it? 100 this year or last year?
Last year. Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah.
So last year, 100. And I got to tell you, this guy's work will probably be around for another 100 years.
I was speaking to one of these artists who's creating for this program. I was speaking to Rob Pryor the other day, and Rob said, in 100 years, actually in 1,000 years, they're going to speak about Stan and they're going to talk about his impact. And if you think about Stan as a creator, he is like his name, I think, will be like one of the great philosophers or one of the great writers. People still quote Aristotle today, and I think Stan is on that level. And we're really excited. I'm really excited to bring some of these properties out. We have a partnership with GFM Animation for a 5-picture slate that we've talked about. That is really exciting. That's going to be more like what we would call 4-quadrant films and animated. So they're in our wheelhouse also. There's going to be something for every Stan Lee fan. And, as a company, we've taken the time to do it right. And when you're working with someone like Stan Lee and their legacy, it's important to do it right. I think we've all seen sort of the cheap, quick money grab in different arenas with different personalities over the years, and that is something that we've all been very conscious to avoid. And we've laid the groundwork to do this in an appropriate way that Stan would have liked. And by the way, a lot of the people involved in this, myself included, knew Stan. A great many of them knew him very well. And we have Michael Uslan, we have Andy Hayward, both of whom were like proteges of Stan's. And so that's our North Star is really what would Stan say today? If he was looking around and creating today, what would he say about the world today?
You guys, I think I've floated this past you once before, but be interesting for you guys to have, it's probably more difficult or challenging in an AI world, but having some kind of competition through the schools of, trying to find who's going to be the next Stan Lee, right? Who's going to have that creative mind to write these stories about worlds that are so engaging and engrossing? I mean, it would be cool to see you guys have some kind of a competition like that amongst this either. I don't know when you would start, if it's, high school or junior high, but it would be interesting to see what would happen.
I mean, the creativity is out there. There's no doubt about it. Even in a world with AI, AI is generally pulling from what we know
Right.
and creating based off of that. Um, the greatest creators are pulling from things that we can't even fathom. And so that young person, that writer, that creator is out there, those creators. And by the way, I'm a believer that a lot of these tools that we have access to today, Tim, are really democratizing factors and enabling creators to rise above where they may have been previously because there wasn't a system to expose that talent. And today you have platforms like YouTube where anyone can be a creator. Our Frederator platform, by the way, that's sort of the idea behind Frederator, is engaging animation creators to put their content out, find an audience, and then magnify that. And so that's where we come in. It's really creativity of those creators. It's a creator-driven platform. Like we have a show on Netflix called Bee and Puppycat, and that came through the Frederator system.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. And so there are creative people out there. There's no question about it, and they're doing things that we would never imagine, and those things resonate. And you can watch it rack up views on YouTube or whatever platform, and you can literally watch how viewers are responding in near real time.
I see. I try to interview companies that I feel are either provide a solution or things that are needs, not wants, essentially.
Yeah.
And maybe it might be difficult for people to see how Kartoon Studios would be one of those things, but I think it is important to have a platform that educates kids on real world things. Uh, because I can tell you, even, you mentioned Warren Buffett. It's not about reading a balance sheet, but it sure wouldn't be horrible to have a cartoon that actually taught kids how to read a balance sheet, right? I mean, in a fun way. There are a lot of things that I wasn't taught in school that I had to learn in business and in the real world, right? I mean, so I think it's important to have a platform that tries to teach those types of things, right?
It also is important. Again, I'm looking through my parent lens right now. You want your children to have an experience where they can begin making decisions, a supportive and safe environment where they can start making decisions and learn to make the right decisions. And that's what we provide with Cartoon Channel and with Amoeba, is a safe environment where kids can make the decision. And that's the product that I as a parent want. And that's the product that I as a business person want to provide. And so, yeah, it's interesting. You said that animated content might not be a necessity, but I actually think if you look around at human beings, we all, as a friend of mine who's a director once said, we all need things to look at. We're a social species. We learn by watching each other. We learn by watching entertainment content, and so it's interesting. Everybody does want some form of entertainment. All human beings. Storytelling is as old as our species is, and so I do believe that it is a fundamental to who we are, and that it is a need. And then as an investor, Tim, I always like businesses that are in sectors that are sort of cut back last in a recessionary environment, that are recession resistant. And I can tell you, as both a parent and a pet owner, those are the last two places I will ever pull back on spending. And so I always think kids and pets are a pretty good sector to be in from that perspective.
How are you guys sitting on cash right now?
Yeah, we're well positioned with cash. And look, our most cash intensive activity going forward is actually with Winnie the Pooh. And that's something that we think is going to be a great investment. But again, for our shareholders, that's pretty de-risked because that is financed through an entity that's entirely off of our balance sheet. And so that capital is non-dilutive. It doesn't carry a tremendous amount of risk to our shareholders. It's often a joint venture. If you remember, silver screen partners from the 80s and 90s that financed a slew of films for the Walt Disney Company. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's similar, and those were incredibly prolific vehicles and really sort of Wall Street darlings. And so, look, the inspiration for this, Tim, was that we wanted to de-risk this for our shareholders. That's the idea, is approach something from a shareholder-friendly perspective and bring in partners to share the risk.
All right, so I guess the one thing that I would ask is this. I mean, there was a slew of acquisitions that were done.
Yep.
And now you've just gotten to a point where the Kartoon Studio Network is cash flow positive, profitable. Shareholders or potential shareholders might be concerned that there's going to be another slew of, acquisitions. I, I would suggest that it probably would be good to prove that you can continue to make money with what you have.
I would tell you there's no plans for acquisitions today.
Okay.
I will say we are an opportunistic bunch,
I
and when
get
we see an opportunity to make money for our shareholders, we will do that 100%. And frankly, we sit in a really advantageous position in our industry where we hear a lot of opportunity. We sit at a crossroads, and a lot of us are pretty well networked in our business and see a lot of opportunities come and go. And it's interesting. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think Warren Buffett said it's not baseball. There's no called strikes. We can sit and wait for our pitch.
Right. There you go. All right. What do you feel are the potential catalysts in the next 6 to 12?
Look, I think you're going to see some important things coming out of Stan Lee. I think that you're going to see important announcements from Winnie the Pooh. You're going to begin to see maybe some of the creative around Winnie the Pooh, maybe some of the partners that we're bringing into Winnie the Pooh. Likewise with Stan Lee, and likewise with Cartoon Channel, Amoeba, and Frederator. I think you're going to see where and how those are growing. And I think that's something that shareholders are really going to respond to.
Okay. But I do think it's important to go over the technicals. This is a daily chart of TOON, and we could have a potential double bottom that is forming. We just had this gap down and pullback. We had this interesting candle right here where it came down to about, I don't know, it looks like 42 cents or so, and then spiked back up and actually closed in the upper portion of the candle. Right around where this area of support has been established, and that's right around the $1 holla. Now, of course, the $1 mark is psychologically a big number for people. The other thing that keep in mind, when they're on the New York Stock Exchange, the American, which is different from the NASDAQ. They used to be on the NASDAQ, and if you fell below $1 for, I think it's 30 consecutive days, then you have 180 days to get your stock back above buck, and then if you don't do it in 180 days, you can file for another 180 days. But that isn't even the case here. On the American, they are more lenient on the price, and the minimum price. So that's not really a concern here, but the $1 holler, just for psychological reasons, is important for people because you go from a dollar stock to a penny stock, right? So this spike, this candle here, where you had a nice spike back up to close in the upper portion of that candle, actually is pretty interesting. And if this area at 1 can hold as support, I think the next area where you see a little bit of resistance is going to be right here at about a $1.45 to $1.50 area. That could act as resistance, and then of course the next area would be up and around $2. So, and we talk about the potential catalyst that could be coming up, and I think if this $1 can hold, this could be an opportune time to start getting involved in the stock. Now, I'm not telling anybody to buy the stock. I am saying do your own due diligence. If you find that the story is somewhat compelling, then maybe this would be an interesting place to enter. I think if it was up at a $1.40 right now, I probably would be waiting until I got confirmation that it could close above $1.50. And essentially that's it. So right now, if things start to come into alignment and we can get some positive news flow, the key areas to look for would be over $1.50 and then over $2, and see if it can maintain those price levels and then continue to climb, right? So don't want to see a straight shot straight up. Would prefer to see a stair step type action. It's much healthier and more sustainable than a big spike on some kind of a fluff piece and then it pulls back down. Now, the other thing I would suggest is that the volume is really light. Would like to see some good volume on the moves up. Some good candles on the moves up for volume, but all in all, this is a key area for TOON, and hopefully they can hold this as support and start working on a trend that goes from the lower left to the upper right. If you are not paying attention to the Kartoon Studios story, that you can go to Kartoon Studios website, you can go to their investor relations portion of their website, and you can sign up for email alerts to keep you informed of what is happening. So anytime they have a press release, it'll get sent directly to your email. And with everything that is going on, you brought up a name, Paw Patrol. How big of a franchise is that?
Massive. I mean, it can't be overstated.
It's like, I think I read somewhere it's like $5.5 billion franchise, something to that.
I can buy that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you have a property, Stan Lee or Winnie the Pooh, there are the films or the cartoons or the comic books. Where does Genius make money? Or Genius? Where does
Kartoon Studios? Yeah. Well, look, that's our business model, Tim. Is we create the IP, we produce the IP, we distribute the IP, we market the IP, and we license the consumer products. And so I really believe, and if you look historically at kids' properties and family properties, the consumer products licensing. So for your viewers, that's things like backpacks, t-shirts, toys, ride-ons, stationery, apparel. You can go down the list. Every conceivable category of consumer products can be and has been historically licensed. For the kids business, the two leads are usually toy and apparel. But truly every category comes into play and can come into play. And in success, these properties can do billions, as you said, of dollars of revenue and throw off significant amounts to the creators. And so what's interesting about that model is in a licensed product model, the company, the brand owner, Kartoon Studios in this case, carries very little risk. We don't carry the inventory. We don't carry the inventory risk. If the product is coming across an ocean and gets held up in customs on a dock and can't be on the shelves that month or in time for the holidays, that's not actually our direct risk. We're not paying to have that container sitting in a shipping port. It may impact slightly our bottom line, but that's the sort of thing that's heavily de-risked for us. So we become a brand owner, a brand manager, and a licensor for these properties that other licensees come to us and say, we would like to emblazon Kartoon Studios Winnie the Pooh on a backpack or on a plush or on a toy. And for every dollar that comes through, Kartoon Studios takes X out of that dollar. So that's the revenue model.
So I'll share with you a little story about a little company that I invested in a long time ago when it was coming out of bankruptcy, which was Marvel Enterprises. And what got me into first, it was Spider-Man the movie came out, which they actually didn't have the rights to anymore for the film, but they did have the rights for the merchandise. And I remember walking into Walmart, into the cereal aisle, and on every freaking box of cereal was Spider-Man's face. Then I just started walking around Walmart to see, well, what else is Spider-Man on? Vitamins, lunch boxes, bikes, bedding, shirts. I mean, sunglasses. I mean, it was just non-stop Spider-Man everywhere. And I thought to myself, Marvel is literally collecting mailbox money, right? I mean, they go out to the mailbox, they grab whatever's in there, they open it up. It's a nice fat check for the royalties and licensing that they are receiving, right? That's a pretty good business model.
That's the idea. That's the idea. You know, another one to look at. I grew up loving the Flintstones, and so look, Flintstones vitamins and Pebbles and Bam Bam cereal went on shelf in the 60s, still on shelf today.
Yep.
If you look at other properties, like there was just a Tom and Jerry remake. Looney Tunes, actually our partner on some of the Stan Lee products, GFM Animation, just did a Looney Tunes film. And there's Looney Tunes product out in the market. These properties, when they hit, they resonate with the market. They're out there. And like you said, if you're not paying attention, you walk through Walmart or Target or Costco and you don't notice it. And if you are paying attention, what you notice is that every conceivable product or product category has a license associated with it. And consumers are willing often to pay more for that because it's an expression of self.
Yep.
One of my favorite examples that one of my colleagues gives is he was working for a certain music talent show that was a hit, and one of their licensees had a karaoke machine. And they also had the same karaoke machine that didn't have this brand emblazoned on it. The only difference was a sticker on it.
Yep.
And a sticker on the box. And that was the brand. The branded machine could not be kept on shelves. The unbranded machine could not be sold off of shelves at a lower price point.
Right. All about the brand. Yep.
Brand. Yeah. Absolutely. So we're acutely aware. We're in the brand management business, brand building business. And if you look at our team, that's their history. They come from the Walt Disney Company, Hasbro, even WPP, one of the greatest advertising firms, mega firms, holding companies in the world, Warner Brothers, across the industry.
Yep.
And this is a team that knows how to make that product and then knows how to pull in and harness revenue from that product.
I've actually never, the funny thing about this is I've never had a conversation with Andy Hayward, and which is unusual for me because
Yeah.
normally, in order for me to get involved in any kind of a company, I have to know leadership, right? I have to understand what drives them. And what's interesting is I've never had a conversation with Andy. You are a big part of the reason why I am still involved with Kartoon Studios. But I have to give Andy credit where credit is due. There were times when I really literally thought this company was going goodbye. I mean, it was literally going to disappear.
Yeah.
But the capital raises, the acquisitions, the talent that he has brought in to strengthen the company has been an excellent. He has done a very good job in that respect.
He's built a great team. He has also really put his money where his mouth is in a way that not many leaders of companies do. He's invested repeatedly in the company and put his own money into it, and he's sourced capital when we needed to source capital. If you look at this Winnie the Pooh deal, he found a way to finance this so that it was non-dilutive to shareholders, so that it was fully funded, so that we could really get behind it in a big way. And also it was his idea to do the property to begin with, because he said, look, everybody knows the property. It's a book that's been around for decades and decades. It has had time in the market. It's beloved in the market. There's one version of it that many people know, but there's another version of it that many people will fall in love with, and that's what's in his head, and that's what's really going to come out. And so you do have to give him credit. And as you said, he's built an incredible team. We have an A+ team. I'm fortunate to work with great colleagues every day. And so, look,
And I,
when we've spoken in the past, you've asked me how you feeling about the company, and look, I've never felt better about the company. To echo your words at the beginning of this call, I think we're in a better position than we've ever been in, and we're really well poised to capitalize on that. We have IP, we have distribution, we have really two banner IPs that we're really behind right now in Winnie the Pooh and Stan Lee, and both are IPs that address different segments of the market, that have a multitude of opportunities off of them, spin-offs, different franchises, different media, consumer products. They're global in their appeal, and so things are really lining up for us.
so I will tell you, I'll tell you everybody that's watching two things. Number one, Jon is probably one of the hardest working guys uh, that I've come across. Jon, I could call Jon
Thanks
at
for saying that.
7 o'clock at night. I could call. He is a hard working guy, and you don't dodge calls. You take the call, even when you know it's probably going to be a tough one, right?
Look, I'm not alone on our team on that, Tim. I'll tell you that. But yeah, you and I have certainly um, you have started calls with me saying I'm not going to pull any punches, and I appreciate that, and I try not to pull any punches myself. And again, I think our company is really well positioned today, and you're going to be hearing a lot more from us going forward, and I hope to do this more often, Tim, with you.
Yeah, Jon, thank you so much for coming in and giving us the update. And we'll look forward to next time you have some kind of a catalyst, right? And definitely not going to have this big of a gap between. Next time you have a catalyst, we'll have you back and we'll do an update.
We'll do this more frequently. Thank you for having me, Tim, on the show again, and thanks to your audience. Stay tuned. It's going to be an exciting time for Kartoon Studios.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Hold on a second. I'm going to shut this off. Thank you for tuning in to another interview here at Alpha Wolf Trading. Today we had Vice President of Business Development, Jon Ollwerther from Kartoon Studios, ticker symbol TOON. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, make sure you smash that subscribe button. All of those things are extremely important to us here at Alpha Wolf Trading, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.